Well, here we are, it's December the 2nd, and we've just got to do a catch-up. Brian here from Wellington, New Zealand. Excuse me, as usual, plagued with problems with, it's for seasons. They change and I get hay fever and all sorts of things, irritations. However, the interesting events that have taken place in the last few days, of course, Buzz Aldrin's been down in the Antarctic, of course, became unwell, stupid old goat. And we get the news that the second man to walk on the moon's been down there. Now NASA has been talking recently, for some time, the engineers at NASA have come to the conclusion that there's a big problem with space travel, and it's got to do with the Van Allen belts and possibly the fact that they've found that there's actually plasma as well that they can't get through. In fact, it's going to make space travel impossible. So what the hell are we being told about these guys that way back in the day got in a little alloy can in their jumpsuits and flew to the moon? What a load of cobblers. And with usual cognitive dissonance, we just, lie down and take it. Someone showed some bloody clips on the moon landing to television, and of course the media, totally uncritical, they just publish every bloody press release. You can't trust the journalists. The media are only interested in selling their newspapers, or as it is, whatever interest they have in radio and television. They just want to have the viewing audience. And it seemed like a pretty good story, and Nixon certainly thought it was a good one. And so the nonsense goes on about the space travel. Anyway, I guess it's time for us to have a bit of a rant about a few other things. In particular, I don't have any interest any longer, although I'm continually annoyed by all this nonsense about the globe. And we just endure day after day being presented with more of it. Talk about cognitive dissonance. This absolute fiction of the Earth at the equator spinning at over 1,000 miles an hour, and you think we could stay on a spinning ball like that, travelling through so-called space at, I think it's 64,000 miles an hour. It's all absolutely, it's it's so unbelievable, and yet, here we are. At least half of the population, anyway, takes it seriously. And it's taught in our bloody textbooks at schools, and it's grafted into pseudoscience. I don't think there is any more science being done. Probably Tesla was the last great scientist. Certainly Einstein and Newton weren't. At one stage, I was a fan of Newton's, but I've decided that what he did was quite diabolical. Of course, he denied the Trinity. Newton was one strange guy. At one stage, I kind of felt that the alchemy was acceptable. But what Newton did was, a very serious thing, really. He threw aside what the Bible was actually saying about how the universe actually looked, how it operated, the profound insights that Martin Luther got during the Reformation, where he restated the truths about solely by Scripture and letting God be God. Newton, he actually was doing the devil's work. And of course the whole idea of subverting the Bible, it's been a sort of long game. And in the Bible it actually talks about delusion being sent that causes difficulties for humans to understand what's really going on. So here you got the devil's driving the school bus, and he's certainly heading to victory. He is actually described as the king of the world. Maybe, as Steve Quayle has suggested, he's down there in the Antarctic or up in the Arctic. It's two interesting places that we don't really know a lot about, but we rely heavily on other people telling us stuff. None of this is contestable. I mean, it's all just taken on faith in monkey science, monkey man science, as Rob Skeeper keeps saying. So the nonsense continues. Now, what is actually happening in the Antarctic is an interesting question, because Steve Quayle has written a book about a world, an underground world operating from, or world under the ice, a kingdom, if you like, or a kingdom, because Lucifer, without a doubt, is a king. He's a bad king, but he's definitely a king. And he's the king of this world. I think people actually, it's really sad that the Enlightenment has so eroded the whole notion of a spiritual dimension that people feel kind of embarrassed and awkward. They don't want to actually publicly talk about some of these things. I'm sure a lot of people do actually know and do believe that the devil exists, but they don't want to say it, because you can't actually understand an evil act or an evil deed without a personality behind it. You can't have evil acts without evil personalities existing, and the most evil personality that exists is actually Lucifer, Satan, the devil. He got a whole lot of other names, but for the sake of convenience of these YouTube broadcasts, I'm referring to Lucifer and Satan. So Lucifer before the fall, before he was cast out of heaven, and Satan after he was cast out of heaven. I think the Satan is actually a far more evocative name, because Lucifer, of course, was created as the most intelligent being, the brightest, the most beautiful, and he threw all that away because, along with his talent and his skill and his beauty, he was given the ability to actually, amazing really, make some decisions about doing the right thing, and he chose to do the wrong thing. So he is aware of the moral transgression that took place when he decided that he would, outrageous as it seems, usurp the almighty creator and sustainer. He didn't want to. Part of the whole deal, of course, with Lucifer was he was furious that God had created man in his image, and he was little lower than the angels. What was it about man? And in the first event, Adam created in the image and likeness of God. That had and that God loved Adam to the point where he was prepared to actually send his son in sacrifice. Lucifer would have actually known a lot about this. This would have driven him nuts. He was furious. He tried to kill Adam. He's been trying to kill the human race ever since. He's still doing it. And people don't see it for what it is. This war that's going on between this beautiful creature created being, beautiful being created, Lucifer created as a testimony to the wonder of the power of God, turning against God, turning against the most powerful being who's ever existed from beginning to the end. I'm Alpha and Omega, he says. I'm the beginning and I'm the end. It is actually monstrous, really, when you think about it. Yeah. So there we are. We are now a culture shot through with delusions and totally out of whack, unable to understand the terrible thing that happened after the fall and how we fell into, the day that the time, the day that you take of the tree that I have forbidden you, you will surely die. So, I don't think Adam originally really had any conception of how awful that would be. Definitely Eve didn't. So she transgresses and then she encourages Adam. I guess Adam knew what was going to happen. I don't know. It seems to me Adam knew what the implications were of what he was going to do. But after that, he was very unhappy. He complained. Interesting reading those books of Adam and Eve, the book of a cave of treasures. And you've got a hope of getting insights into the whole story of Genesis unless you read some of those extra biblical books. They're just so critical. The book of Enoch, the book of a cave of treasures, the books of Adam and Eve. It's just so important to read. I'm not suggesting that that they are what are the most important aspects of Revelation to you, but they just really help understand the breadth and the depth of the war that's been going on. Okay, so there you are. Until next time, it's Brian signing.